Hello there! In this video, we're going to look at what would have happened if Padme had decided she could join Anakin in Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. What if she could have followed the path that Anakin was going down? Now this is a suggestion from one of you guys. It was in the comments of one of the recent videos. So drop any of your suggestions in the comments of videos that you'd like to see me do. And remember to subscribe so you can see the videos I've made. Without further ado, let's go! So just like in Revenge of the Sith, Padme would land on Mustafar and meet up with Anakin. They would talk, but this time, Padme would listen to Anakin and realise that although she may not agree with what he was saying, she had already lost the Republic, she had already lost the one thing that she had devoted her life to, and now she couldn't bear to lose the one other thing in her life that she loved, Anakin. He was saying that he could destroy the Chancellor, he was more powerful than the Chancellor. Both him and Padme could rule the galaxy together, and although this was not what she wanted, she knew that she would have to go along with Anakin for the time being. She would also see this as an opportunity. Maybe she could rebuild the Republic. Maybe if Anakin could destroy the Chancellor, she could rebuild the Republic from the ashes. Obi-Wan would then come out of the ship. He'd have heard some of the conversation, but not all of it. Obi-Wan and Anakin would fight like they do in Revenge of the Sith. But this time, Padme would follow them, first on foot, and then when it became too dangerous, she would return to the ship and follow them from the sky. When Anakin was cut in half, Padme would land and convince Obi-Wan to help Anakin. Maybe they could bring him back to the light side, she would say. And so this time, Obi-Wan and Padme would rescue Anakin from the shores of the lava river. Obi-Wan would say he couldn't return to Coruscant to go to a medical facility there because, after all, he was a wanted criminal now. And so Obi-Wan, Padme, C-3PO, R2-D2 and Anakin, or at least the half of him that was left, would go to the Polis Massa medical facility. The one that Obi-Wan goes to in Revenge of the Sith with Padme, but this time they would have Anakin with them as well. Anakin would be put on life support and in a Bacta tank while Padme would give birth. In this reality, however, Padme wouldn't die during childbirth. This would be for a number of reasons. We don't really know why she actually died in Revenge of the Sith, whether it was because Anakin had choked her, whether it was because she had lost the will to live, like the medical droid said, or whether it was that Palpatine was doing some Sith magic thing. Whatever it would be, Anakin hadn't choked her, she had Anakin still and so wouldn't lose the will to live, and Palpatine couldn't manipulate the Force to kill her secretly because he wouldn't be able to put it on Anakin because Anakin hadn't done anything that would be able to kill Padme. Once Padme had given birth, she would realise she had a decision to make. Would she aid Bail Organa, Yoda and Obi-Wan? Or would she return to the Senate? Would she return to Palpatine with Anakin and help Anakin to fulfill what Anakin had promised on Mustafar? She would decide that it was just far too dangerous for her newly born children if she helped the Jedi. Bail Organa, well, he wasn't a known conspirator at this point, but the Jedi were wanted criminals, and if she was found to have helped them, her whole family could be in danger, and so she would alert Palpatine to where Anakin and her were. And although she decided that she didn't want any part in helping the Jedi, she certainly wouldn't want them captured, and she definitely wouldn't want Bail Organa to be labelled as a traitor by the Empire. And so she would tell the two Jedi and Bail what she'd just done. She would say that she'd done it to protect her new family and they would understand. The two Jedi and Bail Organa would travel to Alderaan to escape Emperor Palpatine. Padme would realise that if something went wrong with Anakin's plan to overthrow Palpatine, then her children could be in danger. She wouldn't want this, and so she would ask Bail Organa to take Luke and Leia to Alderaan for safety. Padme and Anakin would be rescued by Palpatine. Rescued may not be the right word, but you know what I mean. And Anakin would be put in the suit. Anakin and Vader I'll probably use interchangeably from now on. Because Padme is still alive and Palpatine hasn't found a way to kill her yet, Anakin would have a split interest between Palpatine, his master, and Padme, his wife, and his children. So even though Anakin would know that Padme must have let the Jedi escape, he would keep it a secret to protect her and their children. From now on, Padme would be looking for the right time to strike, the right time to tell Anakin that it was time for him to confront and overthrow Palpatine. Just like we see in the Vader comic, Vader would go on a mission to get his red kyber crystal. This time, however, Padme would secretly follow him because she would be worried that he's taking secret missions and not telling her things. In the comic, we see Vader has to bleed the Kyber crystal, and in the comic, he is successful, but this time, Padme would appear whilst he's trying to do it, and therefore he wouldn't be able to fully embrace the dark side, and so Padme would basically interrupt the procedure, and so he wouldn't be able to bleed his Kyber crystal. In the comic, we see when he's trying to bleed his Kyber crystal, he has visions. He has visions of what would happen if he doesn't bleed the Kyber crystal, if he re-embraces the light side. He would explain these visions to Padme, and so she would suggest it was probably time for them to overthrow Palpatine. Vader would confront and kill Palpatine just like he does in his vision, but this time it would be reality. Vader, or Anakin, would tell Padme that he'd successfully overthrown the Emperor, and in her joy she would say that now they could get back to reforming the Republic. At this, Vader would say that that was never the plan. They were going to rule the Empire together. Why would they relinquish their power? Padme would argue that she thought he was on the light side again and that the Republic was the obvious choice. Anakin or Vader would say that just because he wasn't a Sith anymore doesn't mean that he's immediately a Jedi. They would continue to argue, and Padme would throw around images that he claimed to have seen in his vision, like the one where he asks Obi-Wan for forgiveness. Unfortunately for both of them, neither of them would back down, and so they would both storm off, leaving the argument unresolved. Padme would travel to Alderaan. She would want to seek advice from Bail. Therefore she would reunite with her children as well. Anakin would track her ship and see that she was on Alderaan. When he would arrive, he would see Padme conspiring with someone that he knew was a traitor to the Empire, and he would see the two Jedi, one of which had chopped his legs off. Anakin would be overcome with rage. He would ignite his lightsaber and there would be a fight between Yoda, Vader and Obi-Wan. Yoda and Obi-Wan would defeat Vader, but let him live. They would take him as prisoner. Padme and Bail Organa, meanwhile, would have been having a conversation. They would have concluded that the Empire had to remain until the power void left by Palpatine's death had been filled. They couldn't reorder the Empire into a republic immediately, because it would leave a power vacuum. Padme would therefore go and visit Vader and calm him down, informing him that she had no intent to overthrow the Empire anytime soon because of her conversation with Bail. Unfortunately for Padme and Bail, the news of Palpatine's death would spread around the galaxy quite quickly, and high-ranking Imperials would try and claim power. There would be a power struggle, and Padme would be forced to ask Vader to become an enforcer for her, to ensure that the galaxy doesn't fall into chaos or doesn't become ruled by another tyrant like Palpatine. Padme would tell Vader that this was necessary, it was the only way forward, and Vader would listen to her because after all she has far more political experience than he does. Over time, Padme would basically become the new Emperor or Empress of the galaxy. She wouldn't want this position, but she would be forced into it. She would convince herself that initially it was just temporary, but slowly she would become more and more desperate until she would finally embrace her role as Empress. She would see that the galaxy was so corrupt and that the senators and politicians were mostly in it for themselves. She would therefore decide that maybe an empire was the best way to go, and she could dictate how the galaxy was run into a perfect galaxy, her perfect galaxy. Therefore, Empress Padme would become the new Emperor of the Galactic Empire. Padme and Vader would rule the galaxy. Padme really was the one in charge. Vader didn't understand politics well enough. And she would still hold most of her ideals. Most of her ideas would be good. They would be for what she saw as the good of the galaxy, not just the good of herself. Anakin, or Vader, we'll call him Anakin from now on, would embrace both the light side and the dark side. He would be influenced by Padme. Her intentions were often good, it was just the means by which she tried to get her aims that were the problem. Padme would tell Bail Organa that she wanted him as an advisor, but Bail would say that he could not support a dictatorship. Padme would see any resistance to her rule as rebellion, but due to this morality that she had that Palpatine didn't have, she wouldn't use excessive force. She wouldn't send battalions of troops to wipe out civilizations. Instead, she would deploy military presences on planets that appeared to show rebellion. And so one of these planets would be Alderaan after her conversation with Bail. The military presence on Alderaan would be there to ensure that no rebellion could continue to form. Bail wouldn't be too happy about the fact that the Empire had basically occupied his planet, and the Jedi would still be living on Alderaan in secret, hiding from the Empire. And so Bail would ask them to help him drive off the military presence. The Jedi, aided by Alderaan's local forces, would successfully drive off the military presence on Alderaan. A rebellion would form, with Alderaan at its centre, although it would only really be called a rebellion by the Empire. The people who were part of this rebellion would just call themselves Free Planets. Because of Padme's unwillingness to use excessive force on this rebellion, or Free Planets, free space would form, with Alderaan at its centre. Basically, the planets around Alderaan would leave the Empire, and Padme would not use the force required to reclaim them as part of the Empire. This free space would form their own republic, a republic of free space, and so the galaxy would be divided into two, basically, with Imperial space and free space. The Jedi would be able to reform within free space, whilst the Empire existed within Imperial space. There would be conflicts on planets that were trying to transition between Imperial space and free space, or planets that were trying to transition between free space and Imperial space. But this would be how the galaxy would stay for a very long time. And so that's how I think Star Wars would have gone if Padme had decided that actually in Revenge of the Sith she would join Anakin. But that's just my opinion. Comment down below what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Let me know, or let me know anything else within reason. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Remember to check out any of the other videos I've made. There's a great one in the bottom left, probably in the top left as well. Remember to follow on Twitter. There's a link in the description. Thanks for watching. Bye.